Coming up, the latest from Capitol Hill as seen through the eyes of Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. That's next on Perspectives. Hello, I'm Sam Jones. Our guest today, United States Senator James Lankford. Senator, welcome. Good to have you here again.
Glad to be with you again.
You don't show any signs of wear. I don't see any bullet holes.
You know, a little more gray coming in, but that's all right. That's
well, you
the
expected
gift.
that,
That's
didn't
the
you?
gift of age, anyway.
Have a good Easter.
Yes, very good Easter.
Good family gathering.
Good to be able to be with family. My wife roasted a leg of lamb, and so once we had that rest, I carved it all up, singing "Ba Ba Black Sheep, Have You Any Wool?" as we cut it all up and served it. It was a really nice time to be able to see
Surprised
family.
She didn't get you right out of the dining room.
She told me that was wrong on multiple levels, but we had a great time in worship with our family early that morning. We went together for a Good Friday service on Friday evening, which is a special time with our church, just to be able to remember the crucifixion on Friday and then resurrection on Sunday.
You know, I had neighbors that left for the sunrise service, and it came a downpour about 15 minutes after they left and continued. So we had weather elements here to continue.
We had a lot of weather around Easter morning, but for most of us, especially on the eastern side of the state, we're grateful to have the rain. Unfortunate that it happened right on sunrise services. Some Oklahomans that were in Washington, D.C. Sent me some pictures. Easter Sunday morning, they went out. There's a sunrise service at the Lincoln Memorial, and they went to the Lincoln Memorial for sunrise services that day. And on Easter Sunday, and they were sending me pictures of that as well. So it's good to be able to see.
Last time we talked, we had not been through the election. And after the election, when everybody's going, what? Which I think even the Republican Party was genuinely surprised. Now, I want to jump ahead a little bit, but I want to come back to a couple of things that have happened in the first 100 days. The town halls, how have they gone for you?
Town halls have gone well for us. It is a different group of people that are coming. I like the town halls to be really conversation, where I can get a chance to listen, try to understand where people are coming from. I'll try to explain why I've made decisions. I'm amazed at the number of times that I'll have a question from a town hall meeting that they'll say, this is what I've read in some media report or what I've seen online. And I'll say, do you want the rest of that story? And to be able to explain out what else was not said in that story or what was not said on that social media post. And so it gives us some good time for dialogue. The only way to do that is to get smaller groups. When we have a lot of people show up, it's hard to be able to do it. And so we work hard to be able to have not only dialogue, where we get a chance to hear each other, but to keep it conversational and respectful, regardless of what the issues are. And we as Oklahomans don't agree on everything, and that's okay. We should have respectful dialogue in the process.
I agree.
Yeah.
Does it bother you when they hold up the red or the green cards?
So we've had very few people do that in our meetings, and quite frankly, I don't think that helps anything. That makes it more contentious, because what happens is if someone's holding up cards or trying to clap or boo, it encourages the person next to them that disagrees with them for them to then take it on, and then it suddenly becomes confrontational among the group. It doesn't bother me, but it discourages good dialogue. Now, for some people, they're coming to town hall meetings not to get their point of view out, but to try to make social media, to become Facebook famous, to try to be able to get something out there. They're not really coming for dialogue. They're coming to create a scene. I get that. I'm not going to be able to stop that. But I do encourage everyone that while we're there, let's really have dialogue and let's try to talk about it.
It seems as though there's been a groundswell of that all across the United States.
Right.
And one would think, at first blush, it's organized. I tend to believe it's not. I tend to believe that at the same time we saw a lot of anger go into the White House after the election, we're seeing now anger out in the heartland of folks saying, wait a minute, I don't like what's going on here, and I want some answers.
There's a good mix of both. There are people that are mobilized and says, I don't like this. There is a manual that's out, actually, that's been widely downloaded. It's a group called Indivisible. They're a nationwide group. Again, it's not a problem for them to be able to do that. But they put out a manual exactly how to go to town halls, how to be able to make a scene, how to be able to ask questions, the way you should phrase your questions. So it's interesting how many questions that I hear coming from people that are in the exact formula that's been put out by this manual. One of the things that the manual says is basically don't let them answer, just applaud and try to do things spread out in the room, make it look like you're not together. So there's all these different strategies to try to make it look more organic than it is. It also talks about calling media ahead of time and bothering them to make sure that they come, or trying to frame certain questions to media so that when the media ask me questions, they'll really ask the questions that they want to ask. So that there is a strategy that's working. But I don't take away the genuineness of people that are frustrated that are in the process.
Has anybody bothered to investigate the origins of that booklet?
Oh, no, it's out there. I mean, it's a group of Democratic staff members that worked during the Obama administration.
We know that for a fact.
Yeah, we know that for a fact. They published their names with it, but they've released that and said, here's who we are, here's what we did, here's what we saw as most effective if you're going to try to make an impact. And they looked at some of the organic things that happened during the Tea Party movement and said, here's some of the things that they did, here's some of the things that worked and didn't work, so here's what we would recommend is done. So here's how to call an office, here's how to do a town hall meeting, here's how to engage. So they're very detailed in what they're going to do. Again, it's America. Everyone has the right to be able to redress grievances with their government. I don't fault that. And I don't fault the genuineness of people that are actually coming that have a concern. But it is an organized effort as well.
Let's go back to the election. A lot of folk got up the day after the election going, what happened?
Right.
Were you at all surprised?
The last 48 hours before the election, I told people that Donald Trump was going to win because you could just see the shift that was happening in the nation and see several states that should not be in play that were in play and kind of watch that transition occur a little bit. So that last 48 hours, I was out there telling people, no, it really looks like he's going to win. So in some ways, I wasn't surprised that he won. I was surprised at the states that he won and how large the victory was.
It seems to me, and again, I'm not the brightest bulb in the box, so let's get that on the table. But it seems to me like the one thing he did do, in addition to corralling the anger in this country, was he managed to bring to the forefront a style that was no style, if you will, no eloquence, no, and I use this loosely, no real dignity. The tweet became the main weapon of choice at the most incredible hours, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And people, boy, look at that. Look what he said. I recall in the debate with Hillary Clinton, him walking around her, and I thought, that isn't done. That's not the way to conduct oneself in a debate. After the election, when he started saying things like, ours was the largest inauguration, and the pictures clearly, do you stand behind this president?
So it's an interesting thing that a lot of folks have said all the way through the end of the election and then after the election, that there's a group of people that don't take him seriously but take him literally, and there's another group that take him literally but not seriously. So there's a lot of folks that look at what he says specifically and says he doesn't really mean it, but I understand where he's coming from, but he doesn't mean it exactly. There's another whole group in the media that says, no, we're going to take every word. I think the reaction that has been experienced by President Trump has been a reaction against the politically correct speech, the managed speech that's been around for several decades now, where people say, I don't want someone to just manage and be careful. I want just to say your mind, just speak it and say what I'm feeling. And so a whole group of people risen up nationwide and said, finally someone that actually says what they mean and that they're going to just get it out there, and I know they're going to go negotiate and get it on. I don't speak that way. I don't encourage my children to speak that way. We don't speak that way as a staff. I don't tweet that way. I do think we as a nation can find ways that we can get common ground, and we're going to figure out a way to be able to work things out. We don't agree. That doesn't mean you sacrifice your values. There are times that you bring up a set of ideas and say, I think this is the right way to go. Someone brings up a different set. I don't have to belittle them. They're a fellow American just like I am.
But pardon me for interrupting, Senator, it seems to me that's one area where the Democrats missed it. Because since he did tap into that anger and he did tap into that dissatisfaction, the Democrats were talking to a more elite group in this country. Am I reading that correctly?
No, I think there's still a good mix. The Democrats are doing their post-mortem after the election just like Republicans did a few years ago. But what's funny to me is after the election 4 years ago, Republicans went back and evaluated what do we want in a candidate, how would we run a campaign, and there was a list of about 8 items that were put out there to say, if we're going to win the next election, we need to do this, say this, have this policy position. Donald Trump violated every one of those 8, and he won anyway. because he did tap into a whole group of Americans that either don't typically vote, or that were just angry enough, or they were tapping him for different reasons. The Supreme Court became a very big issue. For a lot of people to say, I don't philosophically agree with how he does it, but we've got to be able to manage the Supreme Court and get it on track. So,
I recall also the promises he made in coal country.
Right.
And I recall, too, him saying on at least 3 occasions that I heard where he referred to the new coal as clean coal.
Right.
And I kept thinking to myself, is that anything like fat-free pork? Because there ain't no such animal.
Right. So there's been a lot of work on coal to try to figure out how to be able to manage mercury, how to be able to manage carbon release and sequestration of carbon. That's been a big issue for coal for a while, and a lot of research is out there. The clean coal term is actually not a new term. It's about 20 years old, and then go back about 10 years ago, and all the transition that was happening in coal, both here in our state and in other states, to be able to see how do you limit the emissions, how do you put a scrubbers on there, how do you be able to evaluate that. The carbon is the big piece. A lot of research has been done. In fact, there's 2 facilities that do carbon capture on coal, but it's so incredibly expensive, it's not cost effective.
No, and the majority, and I can say this with a little bit of authority here because I've talked to a number of the people involved, of industries in Oklahoma have made the move or are in the process of moving to natural gas.
They have.
Which is going to eliminate the demand for coal.
Right, and long term, that's the direction coal's going. The hard part for us as a nation is we're at our best when we have a diverse energy production. When you've got coal, when you've got natural gas, when you've got nuclear, when you have solar, when you have wind, when you have hydroelectric, you've got geothermal, when you've got this good mix of where we're getting our energy sources from, it keeps prices down. At some point, natural gas prices will spike up again. And that hurts directly individuals, just like we saw 20 some odd years ago. But we'll see that same thing again with coal and everything as well.
Well, forgive me, but I have to slip this line, and I read a fellow that's on Saturday Night Live made the statement not too long ago that energy companies are really having it rough right now. One of them had to lay off 25 congressmen. And I thought, oh, God, now that's a funny line.
Funny.
I don't care what
That's
anybody
funny.
says.
That's a funny line.
It is a funny line. Do you find yourself at times trying to figure out how deep the water is with the Republican Party?
In what way?
The party seems divided to me.
Oh, yes.
At one time, we were talking about established Republican Party,
Right.
conservative values. Then we were talking Tea Party and Republican Party. Now we got a whole new element in there going, let's stir this up. And the Tea Party's going, wait, we said it first. What's your take on that?
Well, what's funny to me is I have a lot of folks that'll catch me and say, why don't Republicans there think like Republicans here? And I'll typically smile and say, Republicans in Ohio and in Maine and in Washington State do not think the same way that Republicans do in Oklahoma and Texas and Arkansas. We just think differently. It's the same party. There's a lot of diversity in it. It's the same thing with Democrats, by the way. They're having the same conversations now where they're going to be more of a Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren wing, or they're going to be more of a wing that's more middle America in the sense of, you know, trying to reach out to more people. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. I have a friend of mine that serves in the Senate that says it's not unlikely that we could have 6 political parties in 20 years rather than 2, and to be more coalition governments, as a lot of other nations have coalition governments rather than have a 2-party system. Now, I'm a little skeptical of that just based on the structure that it takes to be able to put together a party to be able to do it. But the parties are not unified around a single structure anymore. This is not like it was 30 years ago.
Oh, Will Rogers would love this.
Oh, yes. And I have to tell you, I have lots of folks that catch me and say, this is crazy. And I think every one of Will Rogers' jokes that he told in the 1930s is still funny today. And it was funny and true then, and it's still funny today.
I know, even more so,
Right.
if you will. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more right after this.